Hello, welcome to, I think this is 2021. Looking ahead, we have sound on YouTube.
Look
Pardon
forward,
me.
looking ahead.
Yes. The pandemic put a halt to almost everything last year, movies, TV shows, and conventions, just to name a few. With things opening up and getting back to normal, what are we looking forward to this year? That's a really awesome description. And it's just the amazing, I know traditionally on panels, the moderator would say a little bit of a spiel and then tell the panelists to introduce themselves. But since it's just you and I, we don't have a mod, I feel like I could introduce you. We've done a few panels together. This is the amazing, the incomparable Arnold T. Blumberg. Actually, that's really all I know. I know he's written some great stuff. He knows some awesome things. Every panel is that much better because he's on it. Yeah, I dig that.
And I could say the same about my fellow panelist, Aaron Cisco, who's also a dashing fellow who always knows how to dress for the occasion. And we're going to talk about 2021 and what we're looking forward to.
Super groovy. So I guess right off the bat, Arnold.
Yes.
What are you looking forward to in 2021? I guess, like, sticking to the description, with things opening back up, are there some activities that we missed out or that you missed out last year that you're like, oh, I can't wait to get back?
Well, not really. I mean, in a general, like, cultural sense, I've always been such a homebody type of person that a lot of this experience, apart from the tension that comes with knowing you can't go out if you want to be safe, and that there are reasons why all this is happening, has not nearly been as difficult for me as it probably has for a lot of people, because there are a lot of things going out I've never particularly been motivated. But for instance, I don't miss movie theaters at all. Not at all. I found it to be an unpleasant experience at the best of times. And as I've gotten older, it got worse. And so don't miss it. Love the idea of streaming and of sitting at home with a nice screen, fully aware of the fact that also means there are plenty of people that maybe don't have that option, can't have a nice screen. And there are plenty of people that love theaters. I hope we get back to it and everybody gets to do what they love. But I don't miss any of that. But it has been interesting seeing so much content that we would have expected get shuffled around, get delayed. And it's nice to finally see us catching up to a point where we're starting to get some of that. For example, WandaVision and the Marvel stuff. That is like at the top of my list for things I'm most looking forward to. And I'm delighted that we're finally getting to the point where we could start seeing some of that again.
Right on. I'm one of those folks who is definitely looking forward to going back to theaters in a safe way. When they had that brief reopening earlier in the year, or towards the middle of 2020, in there before we had to shut down again, I did visit an AMC just to see what their new procedures were like.
Yeah.
And I was very impressed with how serious they were taking it, especially considering all the conflicting messages that were coming out from different political groups and just people in general. But AMC, after kind of tripping and right out of the gate with some of their statements and the things their CEO is saying, when they did open, the distancing and the new filtration system and the cleaning protocols was very comfortable. And it's one of those things where even when we get past the pandemic, knock on wood, I don't feel like that's something that should stop.
No, I agree.
Like,
I think I was just having a conversation with my wife earlier today. We were talking about how we were hearing all the people dealing with restaurants over the last year talking about when they were starting to gear up for opening up again, how, oh, we're doing all these things, like we're sanitizing menus, between the time we give it to you and the next person. And we were thinking, wait a minute, why would that not be a thing you were doing before? And what does that mean about how we've been living all this time? So yeah, there are a lot of things, including awareness of danger in general, that I think we should hold on to. Will we? I doubt it, because I think we're prone as a culture to very quickly and willingly forgetting everything. But I agree with you. I think a lot of caution, well, at least for the short term, should remain anyway, because there's still going to be danger even with vaccination, and everybody needs to be careful. But it was very interesting to see you thought that AMC was doing it nicely, all things considered.
Well, just the one location that I had visited, which is in the Twin Cities, Southdale, which is in Edina, a suburb that's right outside the Twin Cities, in case anybody is watching and is not familiar with the area. But yeah, they think the law required, I think, 50% capacity for a maximum, and AMC was doing Southdale at first was 40% voluntarily. And then even then, lots of markers on the floors where people could stand, lots of stanchions to guide the walkways. They shut down all the communal stations for things like sodas and concessions. They had the option to order in advance, and that way things were free. So it wasn't a lot of people breathing and touching and interacting. And then it has the where you reserve your seating when you buy your ticket online, or even if you do it at the box office. But it automatically, if you bought a single ticket, then it like kind of X'd out the seats on either side of you.
Okay.
So it's already pretty much an empty theater, but just that extra layer, which I mean, even in the before times, I never fully understood why it's like, oh yeah, I'm by myself. Here's a stranger who's sitting by themselves. I'm gonna sit right next to them. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Like,
I know. I can't imagine ever feeling comfortable with that again for sure. But I mean, I know plenty of people will eventually get back to that, I'm sure. But yeah, I think there's something to be said for a little bit of this caution and a little bit of consideration of all these factors for some time, and for justifiable reasons. But you know, here's hoping that by the end of 2021, we're looking at a world that's not necessarily back to the way it was, but that affords us a little more sense of freedom than we've had. And of course, granted, that discounts all the plenty of people out there who have been so stupid they've been doing everything anyway. It's the same ones of us that have felt the change. But you know, that's what can you do about that? But yeah, hopefully at the end of the year, we'll start to feel more like things are a bit freer again, and it'll certainly be nice to be back to that.
I think aside from the like in-person capacity restrictions, a lot of the procedures that were put in place, I think the Pandora is open. Like the toothpaste is out of the tube, cat's out of the bag. I think it'll be really hard to convince folks to want to go back. Kind of like you mentioned when restaurants started announcing, like, yeah, we're like sanitizing now and cleaning things in a way that sort of you feel they should have been doing always. Like, well, now that they've said it, I can't imagine any business organization saying, all right, you know what? We were sanitizing all of our materials and wiping down tables before, but now we're not doing that anymore. That seems like it would be an odd choice.
Yeah, I agree. I see something in the chat. Somebody giving us our first question. Are there any stream-only science fiction fantasy series that you'd like to remark on that were new for 2020 because of the pandemic that you're enjoying now? So I guess stuff that's been rolling out in the last year. Well, one thing that isn't science fiction fantasy, but that I enjoyed immensely was, but that just happened this January. So technically this isn't an answer to the question, I guess, sorry. But one thing I did enjoy enormously, there was a stream thing, was Cobra Kai, season 3 of Cobra Kai on Netflix, which I think is one of the most perfect textbook examples of how to properly revisit a franchise and do it in a way that is both satisfying to fans and still tells an emotional and nice story. And I think that's an amazing team. And the third season of that dumped as Netflix does all at once. And I binged it in a couple days, which is kind of unusual for me, but I really burned through that and it was wonderful. So that was one thing I've enjoyed recently. Not quite what you were saying, but yeah.
Yeah, if we're talking about 2020 and not 2021, one show I can't recommend enough is Watchmen on HBO. That speaking of revisiting a property, because the Watchmen graphic novel by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons is such a, you know, it's the pinnacle of comic book entertainment as far as like pulp entertainment goes. And then there was the film that was okay, or at the time I thought the film was amazing because I was like, considering the source material that they're working with, this is probably the best adaptation we can get. And then HBO sat down and said, you know what, challenge accepted, and they knocked it out of the park. It is not the graphic novel adapted for TV, but they took the elements and themes and pieces of the original story arc and then said, well, let's fast forward now 30, 40 years and see what this world looks like. And it's topical. The performances are incredible. Yeah, I would say that's one of the biggest ones. And then also with that, and I mentioned this on a few panels this convention, Lovecraft Country, which is also on HBO. HBO is just, they're like what BET was supposed to be in the 80s as far as like diverse creators doing content, but their spec fic in fantasy is amazing. Lovecraft Country, I think, is quite possibly neck and neck with Watchmen for the best TV series streaming of the past 10 years. It's fantastic because Lovecraft Country takes a lot of the H.P. Lovecraft mythos, but then adjusts it and modifies it and twists it in a way that is, you know, kind of acknowledging the kind of person and the views that H.P. Lovecraft that he held, but inverting it and using those to actually say something positive and incredible. And the effects are great. I will say, like I mentioned other times, Lovecraft Country is definitely not for the squeamish. So if you're not a fan of gore, it's not excessive or superfluous. It does make sense in the context of the story when it's used, but it does not shy away from showing some things that are pretty gruesome when need be. So
both of the shows are very timely for
the
kind of voices and the kind of stuff that we need a lot more of right now. So yeah.
And also, I guess I mean, it's kind of like saying, what's your favorite classic rock band? And someone saying the Beatles, but it's because the Beatles are amazing. The Mandalorian is really fantastic. And I'm not that big of a Star Wars fan. I don't dislike it, but I prefer Doctor Who and Star Trek as my big franchises. But the Mandalorian is, it lives up to the hype. So if you haven't seen it or have been thinking about it or don't have D+ or thinking like, well, is it worth it to get a whole new streaming service just for this? No, not for the one, but it would be worth it to get it for The Mandalorian plus the other series they have, one of which just launched a little while back, WandaVision, which so far with 2 episodes, I'm kind of hooked already. I think it's a slow burn, but it's a good burn.
I'm delighted because I'm so happy to be back seeing that Marvel Universe unfolding again, and I can't wait to see where the show goes. And I can't believe I didn't think of that. But season 2 of Mandalorian is a perfect answer to that first question too. And what a beautiful ride it was. I also I'm kind of in the middle. I was definitely like a first generation Star Wars fan. That was the first movie I saw in the theater as a kid, and I was like 5 or 6. And but I drifted away from it after the first trilogy and never became a big fan of the novels and the comics and the animated and all that. I'm aware of a lot of it, but it just didn't matter much to me, and I just pick and choose what works. And Mandalorian was a lot of fun, and I mean, you can't go wrong with Baby Yoda.
And since we're on this thread, are there upcoming titles, either cinematic or television streaming, that are due to be launched this year that you're looking forward to?
Well, absolutely. I mean, again, it's predictable, but anything the Marvel that they're doing with the Marvel stuff for Disney Plus, I'm looking forward to. Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Loki. And the impression we're getting, although it hasn't been confirmed because they always love playing everything close to the vest, is that when WandaVision finishes its 9-episode run over the next 8 weeks, because they put the 2 together, that presumably they're rolling right into Falcon and the Winter Soldier and then right into Loki. So basically the idea is there will always be a Marvel streaming show on every week from now on for a while as they go through that. So I'm looking forward to all of those. And I mean, we know there's other Star Wars stuff coming. That's not necessarily on my radar unless any one individual one of them might hook me like Mandalorian did. But I know there'll be plenty of people looking forward to all the stuff on that side of things too. So I think Disney Plus has got it locked up for me.
Yeah, they do. The one Marvel series that I'm really looking forward to is the What If animated series. That, I mean, it's just a trailer that's out now, but the trailer looks incredible. The animation looks great. The themes and topics, the way it's going to present, because What If was kind of a great, like, it was one that even the geeks kind of like gave you a little bit of like teasing for if you're reading it among fellow geeks. So like, what if? It's so great. But the trailer looks good. And then I guess I already mentioned Bel Air, but there's 3 more. One on Nickelodeon, Star Trek Prodigy, which is their second new animation series.
Janeway.
Yeah, with Kate Mulgrew's coming back. That looks good. And then there's a series Underground Railroad coming to Netflix that looks, or sorry, coming to Amazon that looks good. But then Netflix has a live action Cowboy Bebop.
Oh, okay.
That's set to debut this year. Again, they just have like the little teaser trailer, and trailers are by design supposed to look good because they want you to watch it. But the trailer does look really cool. So those 5 definitely. Marvel What If, Bel Air, Trek Prodigy, Underground Railroad, and Cowboy Bebop, the live action Netflix series. Yeah, I'm ready for 2021 as far as streaming is concerned.
I'll also throw in a couple things that may or may not make it into this year, and one of them is I am looking forward to the second season of Picard. I had some issues with the first season. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and then felt it went a bit wrong in terms of their plotting, but I still am very much invested in that era and those characters, and given what we know already about what might be happening in season 2, looking forward to that. But I am definitely looking forward to, and I don't know if it'll be by the end of 2021, definitely looking forward to the second season of Lower Decks, which, as far as I'm concerned, is far and away the single best piece of Star Trek that has been produced by this new group since all the CBS All Access stuff started. Lower Decks is the best. I have issues with everything else, but Lower Decks is pure joy, and I'm looking forward to that. So I mean, we got a lot of things to watch while we're still waiting.
And what about the big screen? Like, for those watching who might not know, like Warner Brothers announced that their entire slate for 2021 is going to be released directly to streaming. They haven't really explained what the model is going to be yet, whether or not it's going to be sort of pay on demand or pay-per-view, or if they'll just kind of keep their relationship with HBO Max going. But aside from Warner Brothers, are there any other films on the schedule? And again, this is all subject to change depending on a lot of different factors, but is there anything that, if it wasn't being released to streaming, you're excited enough that you might consider, like, all right, I'll go to the theater to see this, assuming that conditions are safe enough for it?
I think given my level of anxiety, and I know myself well enough to know I can't conceive of anything that would get me into a theater in 2021, no matter what.
No matter what.
That's me. No, I mean, I'm just saying, I know I'm slightly probably more on one side of the thing, but I have way too much anxiety about my health, and this is an extraordinary time, and there's nothing that's going to convince me we're totally safe yet, no matter what, given how slow everything's rolling out right now with vaccination, all that. And I'm not, and like I already said, I'm not a huge fan of that experience. So nothing's going to get me inside an enclosed space with circulating air with other people.
Right on. So let me rephrase the question. So of the things that may not get a theatrical release or get a home release or simul release, what is on the slate? So for example, I'll throw out a few titles and you tell me go man, like Black Widow.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to Black Widow, of course. Yes.
Okay. Mortal Kombat.
Never been into that, so I'm not don't even know what that would be like, although I know to imagine it'd be characters smacking each other a lot. So
Sony Pictures is giving us Morbius with Jared Leto as Dr. Morbius.
I'm mildly intrigued, if only because I can't believe Jared Leto still gets work. I sometimes think that when he plays a psychotic character, they're just kind of pointing the camera at him and not telling him anyway. So I feel like Morbius is going to be more of that, we'll see.
So Disney's doing another live action, or another couple, but the one that's up first is Cruella with Emma Stone.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. She's awesome in just about anything she ever does. So I can imagine her knocking out of the park no matter what they give her. So that might be interesting to see eventually.
And then pivot a bit. There's 2 comedies that are kind of like, one's a remake, the other is a very long delayed sequel, however they phrase it now. But there's a new Space Jam film. I don't know if you remember the original with Bill Murray, Michael Jordan, and the Warner Brothers characters.
I'm familiar with it. I think my wife may have more of a nostalgia connection to Space Jam, so it'll be interesting. That's one of those touchstone movies for people that if you were the right age when Space Jam came out, I can only imagine what it must be like emotionally to know there's a sequel going. Hopefully they'll do a good job with it.
Well, Space Jam's the remake. That's not the sequel. They're doing a remake of Space Jam.
They're not doing it's not going to be in continuity with the other one?
Well, that we're not sure about, but they just say they're doing a Space Jam, but it hasn't been mentioned about it following or being a continuation. It's just like, we're going to have live action and animated So the sequel I was referring to is Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall.
Oh my God, Coming to America.
Coming to America too.
I am really looking forward to that. Coming to America is wonderful. I've read a bit about it, and the one thing I'm not liking already though is they put out enough, so they've already put out the little like plot log line. But apparently he finds out that he had a son while he was in America, and he's looking. But I can't understand that because I saw the movie a million times. Nothing can convince me that he was with anybody else while he was falling in love with the one. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know how they're going to justify that. I'm offended on behalf of everybody.
I feel like it was a missed opportunity because they were the original fictional African nation, right?
Yeah, right.
Like before Wakanda, we had Zamunda. And it seems, and they even had the casting choices because the actors who played the king and queen of Zamunda, I forget the actor who played the queen, but James Earl Jones.
Oh my God! I gotta look it up because she died a short while ago.
Oh, she did. That's
okay. What was it? Madge Sinclair?
Yes, there it is. Madge Sinclair. Thank you.
Yeah, and she died a while back. She was also the first on-screen Black woman to play a Starfleet captain. She was in Star Trek IV.
Madge Sinclair. Because they both were cast as the king and queen of Zamunda, and we don't know what country The Lion King takes place in, but Madge Sinclair and James Earl Jones also provided the voice for the original Mufasa and Simba.
That's awesome. And Zamunda was Wakanda in movies before Wakanda was in movies.
Right. So if we got Wakanda and Zamunda are like sister nations, and like the Pride Lands are the ancestral realm, there could be like a nice little Disney Black Panther. This is going into like a really weird place. We should probably get back to 2021.
I think this sounds awesome, and I would pay for a ticket to that. So I'm there.
How about activities? So like in the description, it talks about like cons and theaters. We did a lot about theaters, entertainment, but what about conventions? Do you think, not necessarily will they be back, because that's really going to be up to a lot of different factors.
Yeah.
But as far as some of the changes we'll see adopted, whether they're back in the traditional sense or not, like we're going to have cons in 2021. We're at a con right now in 2021.
Yeah.
So are there some changes? You get to be like the old Popular Science magazine or the old pulp magazines. Like, what are your predictions for like the future of conventions?
And we also got a side question that's also relevant to that, where somebody asked, will either of you go to a 2021 con? Do you think attendance will be capped? Do you think chairs will be spaced? Mask required? So it's exactly what you're talking about. Well, again, first of all, for me, I know myself. There's no way in hell I'm going to a convention in 2021. Not happening. I don't even know what I'm going to feel like in 2022. I think, frankly, I know I'm not alone in how I feel. I know there are plenty of people that will feel a lot freer about it, and we're all along a range of comfort level. And there are people that aren't going to care at all and be, yes, get me back to, being with people. There are people that thrive on the physical presence and socially being together. And I've always had anxiety about that anyway. So the notion of going in, like Natalie and I we talk about how we were here at Console Room last year. We did 3 conventions right before everything started. We came to Console Room, then we did one locally in Maryland, Farpoint, and then we went to Gallifrey. And at Gallifrey, we were among thousands of people. We were packing into elevators that were like shoulder to shoulder, all squeezed in. And then within weeks of coming home from that, everything started. And just thinking back to the fact that we were in that environment is terrifying to me. I can't believe that we did that, or that there was a time where I would never have thought twice about it. But now I don't know how long it'll be before I ever cannot think twice about that kind of experience. I mean, will there be conventions? Of course. I think this setup is wonderful. I think we have the opportunity to interact with one another. It's completely safe. It's different. It's extremely different. But I also think that part of what you and I and everyone else is doing this weekend is going to continue to be part of the convention experience for a while to come, if only a part of it. Because I think now, again, that we've done this, you can see how well this works. And also conventions are going to realize how well this works for them. Think of all the people participating in this right now who would never have gotten on a plane, even in a normal situation, to go to Console Room. but they can attend this from all around the world. So there's an audience factor to this that I think is also beneficial to conventions. So it'll be some time before I can feel comfortable being in a room with a lot of people. But this is wonderful, and maybe as we move forward, this will always be a part of it, and that would be nice.
I agree. I think it's going to be a little bit of a shrinkage and a huge modification. Like this is, it sounds so cliche, but this is the turning point because there are so many benefits. I think we'll definitely see conventions return with in-person options, but I think the virtual element will remain, to the point that even by 2024, 25, I think it'll be odd to see a convention of certain size that didn't have a virtual programming track, just because there's so, as you mentioned already, with the capabilities to attend wherever you actually are without having to leave there. And then I would imagine on the other side too, it would probably impacts the way you can book guests, as far as like that probably is a little bit cheaper to pay, or however it works, and probably somebody on the con staff would be able to answer that more. But I would imagine it's a lot easier or a different set of circumstances to say, hey, do you have time to chat for 45 minutes to an hour where you are, rather than, okay, we have to pay their hotel, their accommodations, if there's per diems, if there are other things to worry about
here, you know.
Right. So I think the virtual element is going to remain. I also think that's going to impact the in-person. So I know for me personally, like before the close down of everything, I only did about 8 to 12, like 6 to 8, 8 to 12 cons a year. And then this past year, just between March, I went to Council Room in January, and then MarsCon in March, and then everything shut down. And then since it shut down, I've done about a convention either as a panelist or as a attendee about once or twice a month, just because there's so many, and a lot of these are super far. I was at like Deep Valley Book Festival and like the World Fantasy Con and all these places where it'd be like, this would be a dream come true to do live. But I think that the more that the platforms, the technology has kind of grown to accommodate it, it's just going to become kind of like second thought. And I think that the live action or the in-person elements will just be seen as, well, this is part of it. So it's like, yeah, if you're in town, we go to do this, but I even think that it might, and this is my, popular mechanics prediction moment, I think that it'll get to the point where it'll be odd for someone to only do in-person conventions.
I think so.
Where someone's like, well, no, I only go in person. I don't do the online stuff. And I think the platforms are going to kind of rise up to meet that challenge too, because even when this first started in late March and April, the virtual convention parts really just kind of live streamed video, kind of one way. There wasn't really a lot of interaction between the attendees. It's like we're all communally, we're watching the same live stream or pre-recorded content. But like with Discord and having like actual rooms we can go chat like face to face or like via text, and having all these different channels and all of, I think that's going to continue to grow to the point that I think we might, again, another popular mechanics moment. So I'm probably going to come December or September, someone's like, hey, that knucklehead said we were going to have all this cool stuff and we didn't. I think we even get mobile content in the mix, because we've seen some of the early attempts over the summer to accommodate the pandemic conditions with things like drive-in concerts and bringing back drive-in movies. I think we might have some convention elements like that, where it's like, hey, this will be an incentive to kind of help drive the in-person element. So it's like, we've got the virtual track, we have pre-recorded content, we've got a digital sort of socialization space. And also, if you happen to be in the host city, if you go to this spot, we'll be doing blah, blah, blah. So I think the reliance on one big hotel with lots of amenities, I think that'll diminish significantly, because we'll have so many other options.
That's a brilliant idea. I mean, think of, it'll be interesting to see the many ways that people are likely to innovate, as partly they're forced to and partly realizing we can. But I never thought of that. And that's a brilliant idea, where you could say, think about what that might mean money-wise for a con group to not have to rent the hotel space for a solid weekend and have a room guarantee and all that. If you say, no, instead, we've got some satellite places where we're just holding an event here, an event there. I mean, maybe that wouldn't work, but it would be worth trying.
Well, even for things like after parties, if we're going to do karaoke, rather than say, well, we got the ballroom for this much because we've had to put this down, we're going to go to this karaoke location if you're in this home city. Even the potential still for collaboration between other conventions, especially the smaller ones, saying like, well, okay, we're in the Twin Cities, you're in Baltimore, Maryland, you're in Phoenix, Arizona. We can have fans attend the same con digitally, but if for the Phoenix fans, check it out, go to this neighborhood bar because we're going to be doing this cool trivia event live.
Also great.
And you can still stream it so you can play at home, but you can also do the in-person element. If you're in the Twin Cities, we're going to head over to like the Mississippi Riverbank because they've got this cool space. You can see like, Slitherpuff's going to do a short set, which will be broadcast and recorded. You can watch later, but if you're in town, definitely just show your badge credentials or something like that. I think there's going to be a lot more flexibility in what a con means. And I think maybe the big commercial cons will be there.
You need to start being a freelance consultant for like the 21st Century Convention Experience. You will help them shape. I want to go to these things that you're talking about.
I would be kind of groovy. I think that the traditional con will still be there. The same way, like even with house concerts kind of came back and underground shows in the music scene. But we still have big arena tours. They're just not as many, and they're really reserved for very, very big, high-profile artists. I think groups like Creation and some of the corporate cons, I think they have the pockets. So, like, I don't think San Diego con's ever going away. I don't think New York Comic Con's going to go away. But I think that this will see a leveling of the playing field. That's going to be a seismic shift away from like, okay, these are the big cons. I'm going to save up for a couple years so I can go to San Diego. But in the meantime, I can go to these small cons where I think it'll be like, well, San Diego's cool, but did you know that Council Room's doing blah, blah, blah? Or like, Crypticon's got blah, blah, blah.
I will certainly be watching from afar, but it'll be fascinating to see what San Diego and New York in particular and those kind of places are like the first time they come back, the first couple times, because that is going to have to be drastically different. It's not going to be that mass of humanity crushing into that space for quite a while. So, and I have no idea how they're going to do that. The San Diegos of the world and even the smaller, it'll be very interesting to see how they adapt and what their plans are. And I mean, obviously I'm sure the like Reed Exhibitions, I think is the main company that runs San Diego and New York and a number of others. I can only imagine the conversations that have happened over the last year as they've been figuring out what 2022 and 23 will look like, but we'll see,
I'd be surprised if they tried to keep up. Facade is the wrong word. I don't mean it disparagingly, but there is a sense that, so cons of that size, with that nature, so even things like Wizard World or Wizard Cons, San Diego, New York, they're almost more of a promotional event that has a con kind of attached to it.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So I would be surprised if we didn't see like a little bit of a fracturing where like the con elements, like Wizard World's been pretty good about doing that throughout this whole year. They say, hey, we're doing a live stream Q&A with so-and-so, and that's kind of the con element. But I think the actual con event will be more like, well, if you want to see, the new announcements from the big studios and the big publishers, we're having this sort of convention in the traditional sense of convention. But the con part of it, like the fan convention elements, I think they're going to start to slowly splinter off, especially just because the opportunity now, we've had 10 months pretty much to sort of test and perfect and get things going. And I mean, this Council Room Virtual Con is miles above in terms of experience. Like just some of the virtual cons I attended last month, the virtual cons attended over the summer, like, and not in terms of like
learning fast,
right? Yeah. Like those cons weren't bad. It's just they were at this place now. The technology and the experience is there, so now the con is even better. So in the next couple of weeks,
it's not disparaging about anybody in the beginning of the year, but who knew we'd ever have to try that? And learning fast, and also even some of the programs, whether it's Zoom or WebEx or other stuff. I think a lot of those companies suddenly had to roll with an extraordinary weight on them that they never in a million years expected they were going to have to deal with. Look at all the virtual learning and everything going on, and they've had to adapt. And now here we are, and it's the beginning of the next year after all that started. And the console room thing, I think, is a superb example of things really evolving. So again, who knows what things will be like in another year? We've got all this under our belt. And like you said, you can add back a bit of the physical factors. And it's going to be a whole new kind of convention experience in many ways. But
I think the two biggest ones, and these are going to weigh out because this might even be like sci-fi, but Star Trek gave us Bluetooth and pads and things like that. So who knows? I think we're going to see a blending of either real-time sort of an MMOR open world gaming.
Right.
Like those mechanics applied to the convention scene. So right now in Discord, it's still very, this is an interface, you are typing or you are videoing yourself.
You could try to get more holodecky and use
get some
goggles
VR going.
and maybe that's not that crazy. Put you in the environment maybe with somebody. Yeah.
I mean, even just having a 3D character like sort of Fortnite style or Second Life back in the day, you make a character and you're wandering around, so you just have that. I feel like there's so many places that this is going to go.
Yeah.
That it'll feel like I did when I first moved to Twin Cities. So full admission, like the first cons I went to as a preteen were just kind of like VFWs on weekends, which were a few card tables, and it was mostly going through racks of comic books. A couple of guys would have like some questionable or DVDs or VHS tapes of questionable legality and things like that. But that was the con. Yeah. And then you fast forward a few decades. Oh God. And it's like, so my buddy was like, you should come with me to this con. And I was like, oh, I've been to a con. He's like, oh, cool. Well, it's 5 days. And it's just like, oh, so it's like San Diego, New York, because I knew the big cons. I had no idea that there were fan conventions. And then that opened up a whole new world. So I think that this pandemic, the silver lining of how trying the last few months have been for folks of varying levels, I think that's the silver lining. It's that we are now in a new place that we would have gotten there eventually, and I think that the pandemic conditions just sort of fast forwarded that track.
I agree. And I mean, and like you were saying earlier, we were talking about there is an element of the market not needing to try, and then suddenly the necessity to try certain things really starts to push things forward. It's like maybe the technology was there, but who needed to try to even bother exploring other opportunities? And now you have to. And it's been amazing to see that really starting to open up a bit. It's still, this whole weekend has been fascinating to me. I haven't used Discord all that much up until this point. And the idea of creating that whole environment and then sort of feelers out to YouTube and Facebook the way we're doing these and using Zoom and all that, it's excellent. And again, who knows what could happen after this with a little more work and some more technology in play. So it's very encouraging. I see somebody, by the way, mentioned a little while back, mentioned that this discussion harkens back to our having John Leeson with us virtually as he was not able to travel. I remember going to one of my local cons, the now defunct Regeneration Who, that was made a big deal at the time about how they brought Tom Baker to a panel event. They put him up on the screen, and he agreed to do it from his home. And of course, because you can't get him to come over to the United States, and he hasn't been traveling for so many years. And there was like the little glimmer back then of where we are now with bringing people in virtually. And that was seen as like, okay, this is good for people who won't travel. Now nobody is. So how do you make that happen for everybody? So it was the beginning of that.
It's just like, it's opening up so many possibilities, because when I first started coming to Console Room, one of the first questions I asked, of course, was like, hey, was there ever any consideration for like getting like Sylvester McCoy or so? And they're like, oh yeah, we would love to, accept that. And then they go through the laundry list of like why certain performers are more challenging than other performers. But now it's sort of like, oh, well, maybe it won't be as challenging, because it's again that ease of access. And even if it isn't in person, like I love meeting anyone who's involved in Who or Star Trek. Like, huge fan. Most of the time in my head, the meeting's going to go great. Then of course I get there in person, and it's a little bit of me just screaming and fainting and all that other stuff. But I still like the experience. At the same time, to be able to talk to them, it's like in real time, wherever they are. It's the future. We're literally putting people on screen.
I know. We all grew up watching Star Trek and everything. Now here we are doing this stuff. Sometimes you got to take a step back and realize, oh my God, we're doing all these things that were in the shows we loved when we were kids. We're carrying around entire computers with a phone this smaller than some of the communicators were. It's like, what is this? It's the future. So yeah, absolutely. What else are we looking forward to? Let's see. I'm trying to think what else we're looking forward to for this year.
Well, there's a few comic titles.
Okay.
Or sorry, graphic novels. I'm an older geek, I guess. They were always comic books. Graphic novels meant like trade paperback or like
taught
some
comics
special thing.
20 years. One thing I tried to instill in all the kids that I taught is don't buy into that graphic novel thing. That was an artificial way to try to make things sound more adult. It's like they're comics. They're
These are
just
the comics. I never saw this
comics
a
are great.
disparaging title. It's like, oh yeah, this is a comic book.
Yeah,
That's all.
it's awesome.
Some of them are good, some are not so great, but you know, that's,
Yeah, give it to a kid and they'll read. That's all that matters. Literacy.
yes.
So yeah. So what's the titles you're talking about?
There's two from Marvel. Actually, there's a couple from Marvel, but two that I'm really excited about is they're licensing again, which I know they've been kind of slow or hesitant to do. And they picked up Alien. They're going to be an Alien series about the xenomorphs, and that's written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, who did the Marvel Zombies. So I'm really excited for that because I love the xenomorphs. They also are doing a Predator series that's supposed to be in the works, or it's supposed to be debuting later in 2021. And then another Marvel title is the next Daredevil. I was never a huge Daredevil fan in the comics, but Elektra, I guess, spoiler, if you're not familiar with where it's at right now, Elektra is now Daredevil. Like, she's taken up the mantle.
I was not aware of that.
So
I've been out of the loop on a lot of stuff for quite a while, so that's fascinating.
I think it was issue 25 for this latest run, where she officially is Daredevil. And I am super excited to see what they do with that. That could be
where's
very
Matt
cool.
at this point? Or is he supposed to be dead for a while?
He's just out of the picture.
He's out of the picture? Okay.
He should, I guess that's a plug. I'm not sponsored by them, but Comixology is a fantastic app. Gives you so much access to so much content. It's like carrying around a comic book store in your pocket. Still support your local comic shops. Shout out to Dreamhaven. But yeah,
the Alien Predator thing's interesting too. I suppose they're not, since it's Marvel doing it, they're not gonna, just nothing that happened on Dark Horse or any of the other stuff over the years is going to be acknowledged.
I mean, Dark Horse they had a few tries with Aliens versus Predator, and some were okay, some were curious, and it felt like, not knocking Dark Horse because I would love to work for you guys. If you're watching Dark Horse, I got some ideas. But like they did, like,
don't burn any bridges, right?
Batman versus Predator, which could have been interesting, but just felt like well, we have Predator and we've got this deal with DC, let's have him fight. And it's like, that was an interesting choice. That's the Midwest way to say that. And then lastly, Abbott 1973, which is from Saladin. I'm not pronouncing his name correctly, but Saladin Ahmed. It's a follow-up to his previous one, but this one is going to be about Detroit's first black mayor working with a private detective to solve sort of like supernatural conspiracies and things like that. So it's a period piece. It's got lead characters of color, and it's got like a supernatural mysterious element to it. So I'm sold. Hopefully, I can't imagine it won't be great, but I'm super looking forward to those in particular.
Very good.
Yeah, and of course,
I'm going to throw out an obvious thing for us to be looking forward to, which is the very distinct possibility we might get new Doctor Who before the end of the year.
Yes,
that's an obvious one for a Doctor Who convention, I know, but I figured I'd throw it out there. I mean, they're shooting. Obviously, there are a lot of issues with that. I'm not sure to the degree that the latest lockdown affected them, because technically I think Wales isn't subject to the same authority that shut down London again, but I don't really know. I'm not the one to ask for that. But obviously there's a lot of reasons why it's a precarious situation, but they've apparently been shooting. And I'm sure everybody listening or watching this knows already, but you know, we found out that it's already been shorter seasons than any of us probably care to have, when we could have more, but now it's even going to be shorter because all the COVID protocols are only letting them have the time, they believe, to complete 8 episodes, which, as far as we know, does include the next special. So that means the likelihood is a 7-episode series 13 and a special. But you know, it's something. It's better than nothing, and there's every possibility that it might actually be debuting in the fall of this year, and it sounds like that's what they're kind of shooting for. So here's hoping we get to see everybody back again. Having just seen Revolution of the Daleks, it gave us like a little bit of a something to hold on to for a bit, but hopefully that'll be back.
Well, do you know or think is there maybe a possibility we can get some more of like the Daleks series that we had at the end of last year?
Oh, I don't know.
The YouTube original animated series from Time Lord Victorious.
They did the little web series. I mean,
yeah, those were cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's all
new
possible. it depends on how long it takes them to make something like that and put it together. I mean, obviously that didn't have quite the same like level of intense production requirement that even an animated show that would go on television did, as opposed to the way they did it, you know, doing it streaming online. So it's possible, I suppose, that they could do other things like that. I mean, obviously there are a lot of things to tide Doctor Who fans over. Big Finish is one of the best examples of a company that can absolutely, with no change in quality whatsoever, function well under these circumstances, because they got everybody set up, they can record from home, and they can put things together. In fact, I think one of the biggest boons for Doctor Who fans in all this was David Tennant can't get onto sets for a while. So whenever Big Finish would call him and say, hey, would you like to do another bunch of audio stuff? He's like, I'm not doing anything else. And so suddenly we get more 10th Doctor stuff in Big Finish. So there are kinds of production and kinds of media that have been able to thrive in this environment because they can adapt. And then, of course, with television and live actions of film, they've had to face the challenge and still are managing. I mean, look, they made the new Jurassic Park with everybody in a bubble and doing that. And there a lot of movies are back. Robert Pattinson got COVID while he was doing Batman. They're still shooting Batman. I mean, I have arguments about whether I think it's wise to be doing it quite as soon as some of them did. But then you also think about the fact that it's not about the actors or the directors and the other people. It's about craft services and the production design staff and all the people that don't make a fortune making a movie, but it's their livelihood. And they're trying to get those hundreds and thousands of people back to work. So, you know, it's a tricky thing, because you want to know that people are able to make a living and eat. And
Even,
that's, you know.
Even with that, the technology is getting to the point that they can, or it seems like we'll see more productions coming together that look like they were shot simultaneously, but it's really so. I mean, two big examples were a handful of soap operas where they actually were having actors and skeleton crews. The actors would come in on alternate days and shoot against a chroma key dummy, and then the other actor would come in and they would just blend it in post, and it looked like they were interacting and stuff. And then the Drew Barrymore, her talk show, which when I first saw it, I just in a waiting room at the dentist office of all places, because that's really the only place to see daytime TV nowadays. I was like, wow, like I can't believe she's got like actors willing to come into a studio, but they don't. They have this sort of green screen effect where as long as the actor has a certain type of furniture layout and can position themselves a certain way, their team like creates this seamless, it looks amazing. You're like, oh, it looks like watching like Oprah back in the day, or
I
Sally
didn't know
Jesse.
they were doing that, but that makes a lot of sense. That's great.
They sit in the chair, they're shot against nothing, and then they're just pasted against, but it's shot simultaneously. And then when it airs, because you know they don't, it's not live, but then they mix it. It looks like, oh wow, she's sitting just as close to her guest as Ellen was 2 years ago. When it's just like, wow, this is
amazing. Now I'll have to go see some clips of that. I didn't realize they were doing that, but that's a brilliant solution to the whole
it
thing.
just it seems like, just like with cons, I think a lot of the bigger productions too, because like you mentioned, there's so many what are in the industry is called below line talent and below line crew. So that's really anyone whose name you don't know in the movies. There's you know hundreds of folks, and even like off production or in the offices, like the amount of folks that go into like the legal department, copywriting, getting music cleared, paperwork, gophers, advertising and marketing. Like there's so many aspects to filmmaking.
It's and we have a guest.
Oh, we have a new person. Oh, look at that. Speaking of technology.
Joining our panel. But yeah. But yeah, you're right. I mean, and the thing, like I was saying, that's the thing. It's that, you know, people too quickly think, oh, you know, these privileged actors and everything, they don't need to bother with this. They got millions. Like, yeah, but it's not about them. It's about the fact that this is an entire industry that was frozen, like so many other industries. And movie production gets a whole bunch of people back to work. And it's true. Ultimately there winds up being a balance. You gotta make these things happen. And it does seem like for the most part, a lot of these things are happening now with a degree of safety. I know somebody who writes a lot of has written a lot of nonfiction, like media and entertainment journalism coverage and everything, and she's also now currently working as like a compliance officer on sets for COVID, and it scared me a little bit when she mentioned that, because I was thinking, oh my God, you're really doing that? And she was like, well, I know the producer and director, and I feel comfortable with them, and I know they're doing what they need to do. But she's like checking people's temperatures and making sure they're sticking to the thing. Yeah. And it's like, well, it's not what I would want to do, but also there are a lot of people depending on things continuing to move forward. So it's quite a world we're in right now.
And it might be a little bit of karmic justice, because traditionally, like, the visual effects and audio effects teams were, underappreciated, definitely underappreciated by the general public, but even in the industry, underappreciated. A lot of VFX organizations, they fold because the pressure is so high and the contracts are so crappy, because most of them are not protected by a union like the Teamsters or SAG-AFTRA and things like that. They're work for hire, and then the demands, and they have to continue to innovate, oftentimes creating incredible stuff. And at best, the best they can hope for is to get their name out there, not like an ILM, because they're kind of like the big ones, but they want to get their name out there, do something big enough that they can win one of the prestigious awards, which then gets them their next client.
Right.
And so now there's this huge demand for more VFX and sound effects work out there, just because of the nature of it. The same thing with animators. Animation has never been an easy art form, from what I understand, but it was always kind of like pushed. And now, like, there's this demand for animation because it is so safe for studios. It's a safe bet because it's a little bit cheaper than, hiring out location shots or
what occurs
blocking out
to
the
me,
studios.
It's like when, remember when we were like all sitting home, everything first started, and then everything got really weird for like those first few months, where like when Saturday Night Live first came back and they were doing everything shooting from home. And it's like, I watched it. There was something about watching it and being part of it. Like, we're all part of this together. It's not, not the highest quality. It's not, a lot of it wasn't even necessarily funny, but in a way, it kind of didn't matter. It was more like sort of, we're all saying, hey, we're all still out there. We're all trying. And there's something really weird. And then eventually, like the quality changed, the technology is catching up. We were talking about before. We're getting more accustomed to how to do this right. But there's this weird little window there at the beginning where everything is really weird. And I also remember where like some of the first commercials that clearly were being done after everything happened were also very rough looking. And you could tell people were being, roughly pasted together. And then I noticed a shift to more animation from some brands that never used to use it much before. And I was thinking, now there's a solution. You don't need to worry about shooting live, and you can deal with that, and you can give it entirely to people who can work on it on the computer. And started to see a shift toward more animation. It's like all these things, that all these tool sets and the kind of people like you're talking about become more in demand because it becomes an answer to the problem. And that was something I noticed a lot with advertising in particular.
Well, it's that mutual benefit too. Like, I know I'm a casual fan of professional wrestling, and watching those early days, kind of like you mentioned, they were also awkward because the rules were, we're not going to pack a stadium to watch a bunch of fellas like greased up and throwing each other around. So they didn't change the script though. So what you would have is a wrestler come down, do their promo, and then pause for like the applause break that was clearly not coming because it's an empty arena. And it became this weird kind of bizarre, like, avant-garde piece. But then they modified it, and they had these screens. And what they have is like this row of cameras and things, so you can actually watch from home, like your ticket. Every seat is ringside, but then they display the viewer as these faces so you can hear their reactions. And I thought that's so genius, because what you have now is you have the audience interaction. It looks like a packed house full stadium, but no one's being cheated because you're being displayed up in row, triple Z, but your view at home, what you're actually seeing is still ringside. I was like, this is probably going to spread to concerts, because again, even when it gets safer to open, there's going to be hesitation. It's not going to be a mad rush for everyone to come back. It'll be gradual. But I think some of those things, people say, well, whoa, we've made so much and we're going to get so much more money if you're a business. so much more attention as an artist, why wouldn't we shouldn't discard these things? I mean,
it's like we were talking about before. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. There are going to be things like this that people are going to go, wait a minute, this is better that way in some respects. Why go back?
It's like
Yeah.
I would never go. There's certain bands, and this is me. I'm not going to name any of them because I'm not going to put anybody out. But there's certain bands I love their music, hate their fans, would never go to a live show just because it's like it's the wrong environment. Love the music. I'll listen to their stuff online or on CDs back in the day, but it's like I don't know if I can do a concert because it's just not my scene, not my vibe. I would definitely pay actual money for a virtual front row seat to see those artists, and I think there are a lot of people like that too, or even just who don't like the concert environment because it's too late or they have mobility issues. And that's another piece that we didn't really touch on, but like this is actually opening the doors for people with different mobility and physicality needs. It's like if someone has sensitivity to stimulation or issues with mobility, well, the virtual elements now, there's no compromise. Not that there was before. I mean, obviously there are ways that accommodations were made.
I mean, there've always been conventions and places that have been trying their best, some more than others, to be more sensitive to the needs of different attendees. But yeah, this is an extraordinary opportunity for so much more flexibility in the way things are presented, with the person who's the attendee having control of their own environment because they're home. And yeah, I mean, I mean, again, like, it doesn't, you shouldn't have to say it, but of course, no one in a million years would want this to have happened. But it's fascinating that it took this extraordinary global tragedy to actually open the door to some interesting things that might make things better for a lot of people in so many different ways in our culture, even down to like what you might consider trivial things like the way we consume media, but to more important things. It took this for us to realize, in many respects, we already had the tools and the technology here to make these things happen. And again, ultimately, what is it? It's ultimately about money. It ultimately still always winds up being, when the companies realize they're losing, that's when things start changing. And we're seeing that, this kind of adaptation is happening, but that part is good that we're seeing all these possibilities. And then we have a few minutes to go. So
just a few minutes. It's really fascinating that it always takes some big push. It's sort of like and that seems to be a trend line with a lot of other industries too. I mean, you look at automobiles, like American cars, or a lot of American automakers were ramping up the size and decreasing mileage, and no one was asking for that. They just had in their mind, like, well, yeah, like we did a big car last year, let's do a bigger one this year, because they liked the first big one, so they must want bigger. And then the smaller, more economical, the hybrids came, and the electric cars, and people rushed to that. And then the American, they were like, oh, well, maybe we don't need to have a giant seats 35 gets 2 miles to the gallon. Maybe we should start thinking more economical. And that, again, it makes sense. Like, if this is what people want, it saves them money, so they'll buy it. I think the same thing is happening with cons. I think 2021 is going to see an increase in the innovation in technology. I don't think things will be abandoned, because again, it's kind of like that restaurant. I think there's so many things. I can't imagine a con getting feedback saying, hey, I've never been able to attend because of financial reasons or mobility reasons or just whatever, and I really love going virtually. I can't picture any com committee saying, well, that's great, but you're screwed now because we're not doing that anymore. That would make no sense. So I think the things that the necessities of mother of invention, right? Is that how the old adage goes? And I think the inventions that we've pulled from these past 10 months have just sparked something that's going to be even way cool as the next 10 months.
Yeah, we're not going to want to go back. Right. You want to handle the ending, or?
Sure, I'll put on my non-regional dialect on my broadcasting class.
We are wrapping up this look forward to 2021.
And if you're currently watching this, please like this video and subscribe to our page. Council Room is happening virtually January 15th through January 17th. Find out all the things that are happening by visiting our webpage, www.console-room.com. And now, stay tuned for a message. Nope, damn it. So close. So close.
Take two.
Stay tuned for a message from our con chair. But yeah, seriously, smash that subscribe button. Give us a like. Check everything else at console-room.com. And don't go anywhere, because the con chairs are coming. And if you thought we were groovy, you ain't seen nothing yet. Thanks so much for watching.
Console Room 2021. By the moons, I honor thee. Hello, everybody. It's Richard Ashton here, Friday the Ice Warrior from Empress of Mars. Terribly sorry we can't all be together this weekend, but I'm sure we'll have a fab convention nonetheless. Looking forward to renewing old acquaintances and making new ones in person sometime soon. You all stay safe and have a really great convention. Cheers.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Tucker, co-chair of Console Room 2021.
And I'm Amber Radin, also co-chair of Console Room.
And we want to thank all of you for attending our virtual convention, which we hope was very close to what you would have experienced had we all been able to get together in person, which we hope to do as soon as we can.
Definitely, yeah. I know I really enjoyed this experience, so I hope all of you did too. We were able to bring a lot of what is special about Console Room to the digital space, which I really enjoyed. So I hope that's something all of you enjoyed as well.
Yeah, it was really great. We had so many activities taking place on Discord. We had people posting on the various videos on YouTube, both the live and the pre-recorded ones, posting on Facebook. So, you know, it was really, it felt very similar to the kind of environment we'd have at an actual in-person convention. And major kudos to our team who put that together.
Yeah, definitely. So we want to do some last thank yous now that we're at the end of our convention. So I want to say a big thank you to our guests, our featured guests, Larissa Garsky, Matt Kesson, Justine Maston, Miss Shannon Paul, and the Seva team. Thank you for joining us this weekend. A shout out to our special surprise guests, Jonah Ray and Richard Ashton. Thank you also. And our guests of honor, Gareth David Lloyd, who played Ianto Jones, Fraser Hines, who played Jamie McCrimmon, Neve McIntosh, Dan Starkey, and Katrin Stewart, who played the Paternoster Gang. Thank you all for joining us this weekend. We are so excited that you were able to join us. A thank you to all of you who came as attendees and panelists. Thank you. I mean, it's a convention with you, so thank you for joining us. And a huge thank you to our convention committee. We've spent a lot of time working on this. All of you have spent so much time working on this. And I think it shows. It was a great weekend. I know I had a great time, and it's really because of all the work that you put into it. So a huge thank you. I really can never thank you enough. You all do amazing work, and I appreciate it. And I hope everyone else sees that as well.
I wholeheartedly agree. I look forward to, again, not just being together with all of the attendees at a future convention, but seeing all of my ConCom all together in the same room again.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, definitely.
And speaking of future events, we do hope to have an in-person convention next year. What are our dates for next year, Amber?
Yep. So we'll be back January 21st through 23rd for 2022. That'll be our 9th annual convention. We're getting really close to a decade, which I think is exciting. I can't believe we've been around for almost 10 years already.
Wow.
So, I know. So January 21st through 23rd, we will be sharing updates between now and then, of course, as we always do. If you want to make sure that you are keeping in touch with us and keeping on top of the updates that we're sharing, if you follow us on social media, we are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or you can join our mailing list. We do have a sign-up form on our website for the mailing list. Our website is www.console-room.com. You can also find the address in the description on the video. And we'll continue to share updates that way. And we can't wait to see you, hopefully in person next year.
Exactly. We will continue to do our Who It Yourself live events in the meantime as well. So we'll be seeing you well before next year. But yes, Thank you, each and every one of you, for attending Console Room 2021.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.